There really shouldn't be, but there is continuing difficulty and maybe danger pertaining to the subject of the moon. When I was a kid in elementary school in Miami, I remember when the first moon landing happened. We were all taught to be patriotic about it. The progressions were on television and everything. The Miami Herald had an enormous headline on it, the first landing on the moon, and there was celebration, and it was talked about matter and a matter to be patriotic about. There wasn't any indication of any conspiracy or any danger or hazard about it. It was a matter of exploration, the first place in outer space to visit before perhaps being like on a Star Trek to maybe the other planets beyond or whatever. And they were obvious about it. The launches of the Apollo program were all on television. It was all obvious. The U.S.'s landings were on the near side of the moon, and I don't know how anybody could. I never imagined that there was any subterfuge at all. About the only danger in retrospect, the only indication of danger in retrospect was the use of a Volkswagen for the lunar rover. Anyway, but for whatever reason, these days there isn't much of any talk about it. And unfortunately, there must have been some kind of a very long-term progression that involved a historic reckoning of the moon in earlier times, almost causing calamity around the world, and that some persons resented that it didn't happen, and that others wanted to try to cause it to happen artificially. I don't have any scientific knowledge about it, but that's what the indications are. Anyway, what can I say about it that others don't already know? Besides here in the United States, all around the world, there are thousands of people who have telescopes. The moon is the most obvious object in the sky. It's noticed. There's probably been photographs taken of the moon, the progressions since 1997. I guess that NASA probably has a transcript that's like overlapping transparencies from the time in 1997 where all of the old features were wiped off of the moon somehow, and then from the time later in 1997 when gradually impacts started causing craters again. Why does it have to be a suppressed news? Why can't it be overt? Why don't they want to get on TV and say, well, yes, we remember back in May of 1997 something happened that caused an erasure of all of the old lunar features that had previously been mapped, and for something like 3 months there wasn't anything. And then about August 21st of 1997, suddenly there was multiple impacts, and the moon was photographed doing a dramatic spin, a complete rotation in the daylight sky one time. We don't know why, but it was a very obvious instance. So what has to be secretive about it? In the living world, everyone's continuing safely, aren't they? Yeah, well, what's the problem about mentioning the moon? About a year ago, I decided, why don't I send a letter to William Shatner, the actor who played the role of Captain Kirk, and I sent him a letter saying, what if you had been, on the Starship Enterprise out in deep space, and you started receiving a garbled and static interfered message, distress signal from Earth, and they couldn't tell you exactly why, but you knew that there was a distress signal, and that your obligation was to travel back to Earth as fast as possible and try to determine what the problem is. And I said in the letter, I said, well, as the Enterprise gets back towards Earth, what if they notice the moon somehow, like somebody's lassoed it or whatever and tugging at it from the Earth somewhere? Then maybe they'd figure out what the difficulty is. So anyway, maybe there's some secret difficulty similar to what I've described. Well, there is. A difficulty that I experience is that the action is live, and it continues to isolate me away while being obvious to any passersby. You know, what I've experienced is that lunar action has pivoted on a particular medical malpractice crime that I mostly unknowingly experienced earlier in my life, back in the early summer of 1981. Well, anyway, it was kind of a nasty kind of malpractice and accused me of having a stain of another man's semen on the corner of my eye and presumably on my mouth or whatever, you know. And they were exactly wrong. You know, I never even thought about doing anything sexually with a man, and I did, you know. But a secret medical malpractice and some persons associated with it decided to secretly categorize me as having done something terrible with another man. Well, for whatever reason, some persons of real power got involved, and because of their own secret orientation, is that they started to attach their secret orientations and progressions to the particular malpractice in Orlando. Uh, so what I experience often, and what some others have witnessed, is sometimes I walk outside, I don't even know, I'm distracted by the blitz in traffic or whatever, and I don't even notice that the moon is in the sky until a sudden impact happens. Somehow, a luminous, what happens is, somehow from thin air or whatever, what looks like a small luminous particle of light or a particle of substance or whatever formulates and then instantly zooms away and hits the moon. It happens within a fraction of a moment. Sometimes multiples, you know. And on one occasion, some person sounded very startled that it looked like a formulation of acorns looped around the back of the moon. The difficulty is that some persons of a malign progression attached a secret moon conspiracy to a medical malpractice crime. Now, I didn't know what had hit me back in 1981, so I ended up gradually separated from a social life that wasn't much before, but had involved going out to nightclub socializing. Well, that mostly that activity in my life stopped back in about I don't know, about 80, 83 or 84. And it was because I began to find out that something had been done into me in an operation that was also taking my privacy away, that I didn't have any way to maintain confidences if I'd seek to have accompaniment of a lady, so I was waiting until there'd be help. Well, now I've diverted a little bit off of the main subject of this. So anyway, what I'm saying is that in this message I'm seeking to, I've experienced a lot of burning threats, you know. They're really serious. They say I look like somebody that they did it to once in 1944, as a matter of fact. You know, one minute they're saying that they look like I look like somebody they burned in 1944, and the next minute they're trying to accuse me of being, Hitler and all that. But certainly, I'm against my reports and my files are a good proof against good effort against the Hitler instead. All right. When I was in school, I was taught that Hitler was defeated and over with in 1945. So anyway, let's hope and pray for stability about that. Unfortunately, uh, another ba- uh, another basic detail that I never even thought about earlier in life was that the big round white circle on the Nazi flags was symbolic of the moon. Well, I never even thought about that before, but it seems kind of obvious now. This is again only for peace in the world and understanding that the moon is out in space and people should be just safe about it. It could be that there's a religious progression about it. It used to be maybe that only priests knew where the moon was when it was called the new moon. When it was called the new moon, when nobody can see it. You know, why would something be called new and exciting, new and notable if nobody can even see it? So anyway, there are mysteries about that. But I don't want to divert too much about that. What this is back to is what happened in May of 1997. What it looked like some kind of an invisible power seized the moon one time, and it did a kind of there was kind of a jolt in the moon's position, and it was probably around 2 o'clock in the morning during some around the end of the first week of May, and then it looked like it was getting brighter and closer somehow. But then, while it looked like it was getting closer, it looked like its perceived diameter, remained the same. So anyway, after some moments, a cloud obscured my view, and it looked like a luminous plateau of some kind projected beneath the cloud briefly above the Village Plaza Shopping Center of Bee Ridge Road here in Sarasota. Moments later, the moon was visible again, and it looked like it was back in its same position after after whatever the energy had been, and it looked to me like the various shades of white and grayish remained, but it looked like otherwise the surface had been smooth. There was an indentation that looked like a cave-in for a moment afterwards, and what looked like a sweep across the surface just after. But the activity of the day had been so much frenzied ranting at me through the entire day. I was absolutely very, very tired, and I think the participants in whatever happened realized that by 2 o'clock in the evening I was very tired and laying out in the open. As a matter of fact, I usually laid in the back entry of the executive center across the street from Village Plaza, but for whatever reason I laid out in the open on the grass on that night. And then I slept. You know, the next morning I woke up and later in the day I'm seeing, the moon ended up being in the daytime sky, and anybody could see that something had happened, that it looked like there weren't any craters on it anymore. So I think, well, there's going to be something in the news, right? Well, maybe there was, but where I was, there wasn't, or I just didn't see it. Well, I was forced to be outside, so I didn't see whatever TV news reports there might have been. I don't know if there were any or not, but it was so obvious, and everybody continued to proceed day to day safely. So I waited, I looked to the newspaper headlines as I passed by day to day, and until I think it was probably sometime in August, I called a Tampa TV news station and described exactly what I'd seen. There is some other detail, but right now the most important detail has been said. And the man I talked to on the phone was recording, and then I said, I described exactly what I'd seen. And he said to call, it was a Friday, he said to call back the next Monday. When I called back on Monday, a very gay-sounding man answered, and he said, Bishop Planetarium said that isn't what happened, so that isn't what happened. So that's what happened. There was a suppression about it. I couldn't do anything about it. The moment-to-moment broadcasting assault at me in traffic sound continued, and the progressions continued. I think it was on August 21st of 1997 when the moon was in the daylight sky, as I had said earlier, that there was a sudden multiple projection that caused impacts all over the near side of the moon, and that then there was a one-time rotation. Well, anyway, that's all for now. I'm going to continue pertaining to the same subject if I can, as I can. And again, for peace and security. Whatever might have happened wasn't a matter of the good people trying to do anything. That there are some of old leadership who had an old plan of some kind, perhaps, apparently. I don't think there's any perhaps about it. And anyway, I'm just hoping that all the good people are safe with their prayers, remembering that whatever controversy there might have been within Christianity, for example, is that whatever possible conspiring existed from within, from maybe the very top, but the resolving is from within also. So anyway, remembering also that people day to day trying to be as good as they can like to remember the term Savior, and that there must have been something good and important about Christ, about the name, about the title saving. So others that decide maybe embarked on a secret plot for a different purpose should be censured, and that hopefully there will be peaceful resolving for peace to prevail around the world, and instead of maybe conflicts cloaked about it. So I'm hoping that everyone has a good night.